They all knew my husband was sleeping with my sister. At our beach house reunion, they toasted to modern love. I smiled, served drinks laced subtly. Hours later they awoke groggy, cuffed to pool chairs. My lawyer arrived. Ownership papers signed. Betray me once, enjoy early retirement. From everything to modern love. Ryan raised his glass, his eyes darting between my husband Brandon and my sister Lydia. The others joined in, glasses clinking as uncomfortable laughter rippled through our family gathering. I smiled and nodded, filling everyone's glasses with more wine. They didn't know I already knew. My name is Megan Matthews, a therapist who specializes in marriage counseling. Ironic, isn't it? I help others save their marriages while mine crumbles beneath my feet. But tonight, in this moment, I made a decision that would change everything. It started 3 months ago. I was hosting a dinner party for Brandon's promotion at the law firm. Serving dessert in the dining room, I stepped back into the kitchen to grab the coffee when I heard Jessica and Daniel, my in-laws, whispering by the pantry. "Do you think she suspects anything?" Jessica's voice was barely audible. Daniel shook his head. "Brandon says she's clueless. Too busy with her patients to notice. It's been going on for 6 months now. With her own sister. I don't know how much longer I can pretend everything's normal when Megan and Lydia are in the same room." The cheesecake platter nearly slipped from my hands. I steadied myself against the counter, my world spinning off its axis. My husband and my sister? For 6 months. And my in-laws knew? I slipped back to the dining room, my therapist mask firmly in place. Years of listening to people's darkest secrets had taught me how to compartmentalize. I served coffee with steady hands while my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. That night, after everyone left, I checked Brandon's phone while he showered. He never locked it. Why would he need to? I was the trusting wife after all. The text messages between him and Lydia went back months. "Miss you already. Last night was incredible. When can we tell her? I'm tired of sneaking around." My sister. My own flesh and blood. The person who held my hand at our parents' funeral. The maid of honor at my wedding. I deleted the message thread and placed the phone exactly where I found it. Brandon never knew I had seen it. Over the following weeks, I became a detective in my own life. I started noticing things I'd been blind to before. How Ashley, my brother-in-law Ryan's wife, would touch my arm sympathetically at family gatherings. How Chris and Amanda, my sister-in-law and her husband, exchanged knowing glances whenever Brandon volunteered to pick Lydia up for family events. At my niece's birthday party, I arrived late after picking up the cake. Walking into the living room, I caught Aunt Lillian watching Brandon and Lydia by the punch bowl. They stood too close, their fingers brushing as they reached for cups. When Lillian saw me, she quickly looked away, shame coloring her wrinkled cheeks. They all knew. Every single one of them. I became obsessed with collecting evidence. One Tuesday evening, Brandon said he was working late on a case. "Don't wait up," he texted. "Might be midnight before I'm home." Instead of going to sleep, I drove to his office building. His car wasn't in the parking lot. On a hunch, I drove past Lydia's condo. Brandon's BMW sat in the visitor spot. I didn't confront them. Not then. I drove home, poured myself a glass of wine and began planning. The next week, while putting away Brandon's dry cleaning, I found hotel receipts in his jacket pocket. The Harbor View, downtown. 3 different dates, all nights he claimed to be working late. Room service charges for 2, champagne, strawberries, chocolate-covered cherries. Lydia's favorites. That night at dinner, Brandon mentioned his mother had suggested a family reunion at our beach house the following month. "Everyone's coming," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Even Lydia." I watched him carefully as I sipped my wine. "That sounds wonderful. It's been too long since we've all been together." Relief washed over his face. He hadn't expected me to agree so readily. "I was thinking we could host it properly," I continued. "Good food, signature cocktails. Really make it special." Brandon smiled, reaching for my hand across the table. "You're the best, you know that? Not many wives would be so enthusiastic about hosting their in-laws for a whole weekend." If only he knew what I was actually enthusiastic about. The next day I called Michael Levinson, a former client who specialized in property law and divorce cases. We met for coffee at a place across town where no one would recognize us. "What you're describing is technically legal," he said after I outlined my plan. Unusual but legal. I can have the papers drawn up within the week. I also visited my doctor, explaining that I needed something for anxiety that wouldn't interact with alcohol. She prescribed a mild sedative, warning me about the drowsiness it might cause. Perfect. As the beach house weekend approached, I practiced making different cocktails, testing various combinations to mask any taste of the sedative. I experimented with doses, making sure they would cause grogginess but nothing dangerous. At our regular Sunday brunch, I watched my in-laws, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and Brandon's aunt all interact with each other, their silent complicity in Brandon and Lydia's affair evident in every glance, every carefully worded comment, every subject change when I entered the room. "I can't wait for our beach weekend," Ashley said, squeezing my hand. "It'll be so good for all of us to be together." I smiled warmly. "Yes, it will. I'm preparing something special for everyone." The night before we left for the beach house, I packed the sedatives, the legal documents Michael had prepared, and enough rope to secure 8 adults to pool chairs. I also packed my best cocktail glasses, premium liquor, and Brandon's favorite appetizers. Every good therapist knows that healing sometimes requires confrontation. Every betrayed wife knows that justice demands action. They all knew my husband was sleeping with my sister. Soon they would all know exactly what happens when you betray Megan Matthews. The morning after my decision, my phone chimed with a group text. I was sitting at our kitchen island, sipping coffee and reviewing patient files when the message from Jessica appeared on my screen. "Family reunion at the beach house next month. Been too long since we've all been together. Brandon and Megan, would you host? The place needs some Matthews family love." I stared at the text, my coffee cooling beside me. The beach house, Brandon's grandfather's legacy to us, had always been my sanctuary. 3 bedrooms overlooking the Atlantic, wraparound porch perfect for morning meditation, and a pool area secluded enough for private conversations. Or confessions. Before I could respond, my phone lit up with more messages. Lydia's came first. "Count me in. I've missed our beach weekends." Then Daniel, "Great idea, honey. We're due for some family time." Ryan and Ashley, "We're there. Need us to bring anything?" Chris and Amanda, "Wouldn't miss it." Aunt Lillian, "These old bones could use some ocean air." I placed my phone face down on the counter, my mind racing. The timing was almost too perfect. I'd been considering various scenarios for confrontation, but nothing this comprehensive. Here was an opportunity to address everyone at once. In a controlled environment. My controlled environment. Brandon came downstairs, hair still damp from his shower. "Did you see Mom's text? About the beach house?" I nodded, watching him carefully. "I did. What do you think?" He poured himself coffee, not meeting my eyes. "I think we should do it." His enthusiasm seemed forced, overeager. "You sure? We haven't opened the house since last summer. It'll need cleaning, stocking. I can take a day off to help get it ready." He came around the island, resting his hands on my shoulders. "Come on, Meg. It'll be fun having everyone together." I leaned into his touch, remembering when his hands on my body didn't make my skin crawl with betrayal. "Including Lydia?" His fingers tensed slightly before resuming their gentle massage. "Of course. She's your sister. And everyone loves her." As I thought. "Especially you." "All right," I said, turning to face him with my practiced therapist smile. "Let's do it. Next month works with my schedule." Relief washed over his features. "Great. I'll tell Mom we're in." He texted back immediately, then kissed my forehead before heading to work. I remained at the island, possibilities unfolding in my mind like origami, precision folds creating something both beautiful and sharp. I responded to the group message, "We'd love to host. Brandon and I will handle everything. Just bring yourselves and good energy." The following day, Amanda called to suggest we shop for supplies together. "I know how much work hosting can be," she said. "Let me help." We met at Costco 3 days later, pushing oversized carts through aisles of bulk goods. Amanda chatted about her children, neighborhood gossip, everything except the elephant trampling through our conversation, her knowledge of my husband's infidelity. As we compared beach towels, I seized my opportunity. "Amanda, can I ask you something professional?" She looked up, surprised. "Of course. I have this client." "The famous client scenario?" She laughed nervously. "Very therapist of you." I smiled. "Humor me. This client suspects her husband is having an affair. She's seeing signs, catching whispers. But what's really hurting her is that their family seems to know, yet no one's told her. Amanda's face paled. She busied herself examining a towel's stitching. Maybe they don't want to hurt her. Or maybe they're protecting him? I placed beach towels in my cart. When do you think silence becomes complicity? Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for sunscreen. That's complicated. How long has this been going on? With your client. That's what she's trying to figure out. When did people start knowing? A month ago? 6 months? A year? I maintained my casual tone, selecting snacks from a display. She wonders who knew first. Amanda swallowed hard. I'd imagine it would be whoever was closest to the husband. Or the other woman. Makes sense. I moved toward the alcohol section. For the beach weekend, do you think margaritas or mojitos? Both. She seemed relieved by the subject change. Megan, about your client. Let's get tequila and rum, I interrupted. Cover all bases. By checkout, I'd pieced together more of the timeline. Amanda's nervous responses confirmed what I suspected. The affair had been going on nearly a year, and Chris had known first, having accidentally seen texts on Brandon's phone during a golf outing. The knowledge had spread through the family like a virus, infecting everyone but me, the supposed patient zero. The week before the beach weekend, Brandon left his laptop open while showering. We'd always shared passwords. Another irony of our supposedly transparent marriage. I navigated to his email, searching for Lydia's name. I found dozens of messages, dating back 14 months. My hands shook as I opened the most recent exchange from 2 days earlier. Brandon. Everything's set for next weekend. Megan's clueless about the real reason for the gathering. Lydia, are you sure this is the right time? Everyone in one place feels risky. Brandon, it's perfect. Mom's idea of a reunion gives us cover. After a few drinks, we'll tell her together. The family being there will keep her from making a scene. She cares too much about appearances. Lydia, what about the house? Doesn't half of it belong to her? Brandon, technically yes. But Dad's looking into options. Don't worry about that part. Lydia, I love you. Can't wait to start our real life together. Brandon, one more week, then no more hiding. Love you more than anything. I closed the laptop, ice crystallizing in my veins. They planned to ambush me. To announce their relationship and minimize my reaction by having the family present. And apparently, Daniel was helping them find options regarding my half of the beach house. I called Michael immediately. I need those papers by Thursday. And bring copies, enough for everyone. Everyone. He sounded concerned. Megan, are you sure about this approach? Absolutely. My voice was steady despite the rage pulsing through me. I want it ironclad. No loopholes. It will be. He paused. What about the other part of your plan? Already handled. I'd visited 3 different pharmacies, using cash and wearing sunglasses. The sedatives were measured and ready. Just be at the beach house by 9 p.m. on Saturday. Use the service entrance. That evening, I smiled through dinner with Brandon, discussing menu plans for the weekend. He suggested Lydia's favorite seafood paella. I countered with individual cocktails paired to each person's taste. You know what everyone likes? He seemed impressed. Of course, I replied, refilling his wine. I pay attention to the people I love. The last few days before the beach weekend passed in a blur of preparation. I cleaned the house myself, declining Brandon's half-hearted offers to help. I wanted to know every inch of the battlefield. I packed sedatives in my toiletry case, legal documents in my laptop bag, and rope in the trunk of my car hidden beneath beach gear. I prepared food that could be served cold, elegant appetizers requiring minimal last-minute attention. Friday morning, as we loaded the car, Brandon received a text that made him smile. He didn't know I'd seen his screen light up with Lydia's name. Ready? He asked, sliding into the driver's seat. Everyone's meeting us there around 4. I buckled my seatbelt, smoothing my sundress. I've been ready for this for quite some time. He turned to me, his expression softening. You're amazing, you know that? Most wives would complain about hosting the in-laws for a weekend. I reached over to squeeze his hand, the gesture requiring every ounce of my therapeutic training in maintaining a calm facade. Trust me, I said, this is going to be a weekend none of us will ever forget. We arrived at the beach house just after noon on Friday. The familiar salt air should have been comforting, but instead, it felt like the calm before a storm. Brandon carried our bags inside while I stood on the porch, watching waves crash against the shore. This house had been our dream once. A place where we'd planned to raise children, host family holidays, grow old together. Now it was my battleground. I'm going to pick up some ice and extra drinks, Brandon said, jangling the car keys. Anything specific you need? Just some fresh limes and mint for the mojitos, I replied, not turning to face him. Take your time. I want to get settled in before everyone arrives. Once his car disappeared down the gravel driveway, I moved quickly. I'd already stashed the legal documents in my bedside drawer and hidden the sedatives in my toiletry case. Now I needed to secure the pool area. The wooden pool chairs had been my idea 3 summers ago. Comfortable enough for lounging but sturdy enough to withstand coastal storms. Brandon had installed metal rings on their undersides for securing them during hurricane season. Those rings would serve a different purpose tonight. I retrieved thin nylon rope from my suitcase, cutting 8 equal lengths and coiling each one neatly. I tucked them under cushions near each chair, positioned strategically around the pool. To casual observers, they'd look like just another part of the beach house's nautical decor. My phone rang. Michael. Just checking in, he said. Still on for tomorrow night? Everything's in place, I confirmed, moving to the kitchen to unpack groceries. You remember where the service entrance is? Behind the garage through the hedge pathway. 9 o'clock sharp. And the documents? Ironclad. I've prepared individual packets for each person. The beach house transfer for Brandon, the vacation property division for your in-laws, the investment account reallocation for Ryan and Ashley, the trust fund amendment for Chris and Amanda, and the revised inheritance statement for Aunt Lillian. And Lydia? My voice hardened. Her packet is comprehensive. Relinquishment of any claims to family assets, agreement to vacate her condo, which is technically in your name by the way, and acknowledgement of breach of familial trust. Perfect. I began arranging bottles on the kitchen counter. And they'll hold up? Signed under duress isn't ideal, Michael admitted, but we've structured them as voluntary settlements to avoid litigation. Once signed and notarized, which I'm certified to do, they'll be difficult to contest. Especially with 8 witnesses. I thanked him and hung up, turning my attention to the cocktail station. Each family member would receive a personalized drink. A final thoughtful gesture from the woman they'd collectively betrayed. As a therapist, I knew their preferences intimately, but more importantly, I understood their psychological weaknesses. Jessica was a control freak who hated feeling helpless. Daniel avoided confrontation at all costs. Ryan feared public humiliation. Ashley craved validation. Chris prized his reputation for intelligence. Amanda was terrified of abandonment. Aunt Lillian dreaded family conflict. Brandon and Lydia. Well, they feared exposure, which was already guaranteed. I laid out elegant cocktail glasses, premium liquors and fresh garnishes. Then I carefully measured the sedative doses, considering each person's body weight and alcohol tolerance. The powder was tasteless and would dissolve completely in citrus mixers. I'd tested it on myself in smaller doses to confirm its effects. Gradual drowsiness rather than sudden unconsciousness. Brandon returned with ice and additional supplies. Everyone's on their way. Ryan and Ashley hit traffic but should be here in an hour. The others are about 30 minutes out. I nodded, arranging fruit on a cutting board. I'll have appetizers and drinks ready when they arrive. You're taking this hosting thing seriously, he commented, surveying the elaborate cocktail station. I want everyone to feel special, I replied with a genuine smile. For once I wasn't lying. I spent the next hour preparing food and finalizing my mental script. Each confrontation would be tailored to its recipient. I wouldn't waste this opportunity with generic accusations. While my therapist training had taught me to help people face their truths gently, tonight would be about forced recognition of consequences. Headlights swept across the living room as the first car pulled into the driveway. Jessica and Daniel emerged, followed closely by Chris and Amanda in a second vehicle. Aunt Lillian rode with them, her silver hair catching the late afternoon sun. Minutes later, Ryan and Ashley arrived. Brandon greeted them with hugs and handshakes while I arranged appetizers on the patio table. Through the sliding glass door, I watched Lydia park her compact car beside the others. She hesitated before exiting, smoothing her hair and checking her reflection. Even in betrayal, my sister remained conscientious of appearances. I took a deep breath and stepped outside, welcoming smile fixed in place. Everyone. So wonderful to have you all here. Hugs were exchanged, compliments on the house offered, overnight bags deposited in respective rooms. I noted the nervous glances between Brandon and Lydia, the way Jessica squeezed my shoulder a beat too long, how Ryan cleared his throat repeatedly when speaking to me. Megan has prepared specialty cocktails for everyone, Brandon announced as we gathered on the patio overlooking the pool. She's been practicing all week. That's so thoughtful, Lydia said, not quite meeting my eyes. You've always been the perfect hostess. It's the least I can do, I replied, maintaining warmth in my voice. After all, we're celebrating modern relationships, aren't we? A charged silence fell over the group. Brandon laughed nervously. Let's get those drinks started. I moved to the outdoor bar I'd set up, calling each person over individually. Jessica, I've made you a ginger peach martini, crisp and controlled just like you. I handed her the pre-prepared drink, complete with decorative sugar rim and peach slice. Daniel, a smoky old-fashioned with extra bitters. Complex but ultimately smooth. The amber liquid swirled in the crystal glass as he accepted it with a forced smile. One by one they received their personalized cocktails, each containing its carefully measured dose. Ryan's tequila sunrise. Ashley's raspberry mojito. Chris's bourbon sour. Amanda's cucumber gin fizz. Aunt Lillian's spiked lemonade. For Brandon, a top-shelf whiskey with a splash of water, his standard drink. For Lydia, a passion-fruit margarita with extra salt, always her favorite. A toast, I said, raising my own glass, containing only the mocktail version I'd prepared. To family, and all the secrets we keep for each other. Nervous laughter rippled through the group as glasses clinked. I watched as each person took their first sip, then their second. Conversation gradually resumed, tentative at first, then flowing more freely as the alcohol and sedative began to take effect. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deepening shades of orange and purple. I turned on the pool lights and patio lanterns, creating the perfect ambience for both relaxation and revelation. Within an hour, I noticed Jessica blinking slowly, struggling to follow the conversation. Daniel's posture slackened, his usual rigid demeanor softening. The others showed similar signs: slight slurring, heavier eyelids, delayed responses. It was working. Is anyone else feeling a bit tired? Amanda asked, stifling a yawn. Must be the ocean air, I suggested, gathering empty glasses. Why don't we move down to the pool area? The breeze might help. Like sheep, they followed me down the stone pathway to the pool deck where 8 chairs awaited. The sedative hadn't fully taken effect yet. They were groggy but still mobile, still capable of following simple instructions. Just as planned. I glanced at my watch. 8:40. 20 minutes until Michael arrived. It was time for the final stage of preparation. I watched as my family settled into the pool chairs, their movements increasingly sluggish. Brandon slumped into the seat closest to the fire pit, with Lydia naturally gravitating to the chair beside him. Their not-so-subtle positioning didn't escape notice. Jessica frowned slightly, while Daniel studied his nearly empty glass with unusual intensity. More drinks. I offered, collecting glasses with steady hands. Maybe just water for me, Amanda mumbled, her words slightly slurred. Feeling a bit lightheaded. Me too, Ashley agreed, blinking slowly. That mojito packed a punch. Ocean air intensifies alcohol, I explained smoothly. I'll bring water for everyone. I retreated to the kitchen, checking my watch again. 8:45. Michael would arrive in 15 minutes. Perfect timing. The sedative would reach peak effectiveness just as he walked through the door. I filled a pitcher with ice water and grabbed fresh glasses, purposely taking my time. When I returned to the pool area, the conversation had shifted to dangerous territory. Should we just tell her? Ryan's words were beginning to run together, his inhibitions lowered by both alcohol and sedative. This whole pretending thing is ridiculous. Ashley shushed him, glancing nervously in my direction as I set down the water tray. Tell me what? I asked innocently, pouring water for each person. An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Brandon straightened in his chair, attempting to appear more alert than he actually was. Nothing, he said quickly. Ryan's just had too much to drink. Ryan laughed. A harsh, unnatural sound. Too much drink, too many secrets. He raised his water glass unsteadily. Let's have another toast, shall we? To modern love. His gaze moved pointedly between Brandon and Lydia. The implication hung in the air like summer humidity, heavy, unavoidable. Ryan, Jessica hissed, but the damage was done. To modern love, I echoed, raising my own glass with a calm smile. And to honesty, something apparently in short supply around here. Another uncomfortable silence descended, broken only by the rhythmic sound of waves crashing against the shore. I noticed Lydia's hands trembling slightly as she sipped her water. Brandon wouldn't meet my eyes. Is anyone else feeling strange? Chris asked suddenly, rubbing his forehead. Like beyond regular drunk? Maybe we all need some fresh air, I suggested, moving behind Amanda's chair. Let's enjoy the night breeze. As I adjusted Amanda's cushion, I discreetly pulled out the nylon rope I'd hidden earlier and looped it through the metal ring beneath her chair, loosely securing it around her wrist. She was too disoriented to notice, her head lolling slightly. The stars are so beautiful tonight, I remarked, moving to Chris's chair and repeating the process. Don't you think, Lydia? My sister mumbled something incoherent, her eyelids heavy. I continued around the circle, securing each person with practiced efficiency while maintaining casual conversation. None of them were alert enough to realize what was happening, exactly as I'd planned. Is it just me, or is everyone getting sleepy? Aunt Lillian's voice was faint as I secured her wrists. It's been a long day of travel, I replied soothingly. Just relax. Everything will make sense soon. Brandon was the last one I approached. His eyes were struggling to focus on my face as I leaned over him. Meg, he slurred. Something's wrong. I feel drugged. Perceptive as always, darling, I whispered, securing his wrists with slightly tighter knots than the others. But about 14 months too late. By 9 o'clock, all 8 of them were securely fastened to their chairs, drifting in and out of consciousness. I turned on additional pool lights, illuminating their groggy faces in harsh clarity. Then I heard the soft knock at the service entrance. Michael had arrived. I let him in, leading him through the house to the pool area. He surveyed the scene with professional detachment, though I caught the slight widening of his eyes. Everything as discussed? He asked quietly, setting his briefcase on a side table. Exactly as planned, I confirmed. They should be coherent enough to understand and sign within about 15 minutes. The sedative is mild, just enough to prevent escape attempts or physical resistance. Michael nodded, arranging documents on the table. I've brought a recording device as well. Legal protection. Perfect. I took a seat in the 9th chair, the only one without restraints, and waited patiently as my family gradually regained awareness. Brandon was the first to fully comprehend his situation, yanking at the ropes with growing panic. What the hell, Megan? He demanded, voice hoarse. Untie me right now. His outburst roused the others. One by one they discovered their predicament, reactions ranging from confused whimpers, Amanda, to dignified outrage, Jessica, to practical assessment, Ryan. You drugged us, Chris stated flatly, his analytical mind piecing together the evidence despite his compromised state. Yes, I acknowledged. Nothing dangerous. You'll all feel normal by morning. Just something to ensure you stay put for this conversation. This is illegal, Daniel blustered, attorney instincts kicking in despite his slurred speech. Unlawful restraint, administering drugs without consent. Actually, Michael interjected smoothly, Ms. Matthews consulted me precisely to ensure everything remained within legal boundaries. The sedative is an over-the-counter sleep aid, and the restraints are merely to prevent accidental injury while you're impaired. Who is this? Jessica demanded. Michael Levinson, attorney at law, he replied, placing his business card on each person's lap. I'm here to oversee some property transfers and settlement agreements. Settlement agreements? Brandon's face drained of color. Megan, what is this? I stood, moving to the center of their circle. My voice remained steady, professional. My therapist voice. This is the consequence of collective betrayal. This is what happens when an entire family conspires to hide the truth from one of their own. I turned to face each person individually. Jessica and Daniel, you learned about Brandon and Lydia's affair over a year ago. Instead of telling me, you protected your son and enabled my sister. Jessica started to protest, but I continued. Chris and Amanda, you knew 9 months ago when Chris saw texts on Brandon's phone. You decided it wasn't your place to interfere. Chris looked away, shame evident even through his sedated state. Ryan and Ashley, you figured it out at Christmas when you saw them kissing in the garage. You decided it was complicated and not your business. Ryan attempted to shrug, but the restraints limited his movement. Aunt Lillian, you've known for at least 6 months. You told yourself it wasn't your generation's place to comment on modern relationships. The elderly woman had tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. And the two of you, I said finally, facing Brandon and Lydia directly. My husband and my sister. The architect and accomplice of my humiliation. Planning to ambush me this weekend with your relationship announcement. Planning to try to take my house. The silence was absolute. Even the waves seemed to pause. How did you, Brandon began. I'm a therapist who specializes in deception and betrayal, I interrupted. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't eventually see the signs? Read the texts? Find the hotel receipts? Overhear the whispers? I gestured to Michael, who approached with his briefcase. And now we're going to have a different kind of announcement than the one you planned. Mr. Levinson, would you please explain the documents? Michael cleared his throat. I have prepared a series of legal agreements. Upon signing, they will transfer full ownership of this beach house to Megan Matthews exclusively. Additional documents address division of marital assets, transfer of investment accounts, and termination of joint property rights. This is insane, Brandon sputtered. We're not signing anything. I smiled thinly. Then you're welcome to explain to the authorities why 8 adults are sedated and restrained at your beach house. I'm sure the media would love that story. Prominent attorney and his family involved in some kind of cult ritual? Or perhaps something more sordid. Ryan tested his restraints again. This is blackmail. No, I corrected. This is justice. You all participated in my humiliation. Now you can participate in my liberation. I nodded to Michael, who placed the first document on a clipboard and held it before Jessica. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced, the signing ceremony is about to begin. And trust me, you'll all want to sign. Jessica was the first to sign, her hand trembling but her signature still recognizable. The former elementary school principal had always valued order above all else. And even in this extraordinary situation, her ingrained respect for procedure won out. Smart choice, I murmured as Michael moved to Daniel. My father-in-law hesitated, legal training battling with self-preservation. This won't hold up in court. Duress invalidates. Daniel, I interrupted, your son was planning to take my half of this beach house with your legal assistance. I have the emails. Sign the paper or explain to your law partners why you were drugged and tied to a chair at your son's beach house. After another moment's hesitation, he scrawled his signature across the line. Ryan and Ashley signed more quickly, their younger faces still showing shock but also a hint of guilty relief, as if being punished somehow absolved them. Chris hesitated until Amanda whispered, "Just do it," then signed with a defeated slump of his shoulders. Aunt Lillian wept quietly as she signed, her arthritic hand moving slowly across the paper. "I should have told you," she said, voice cracking. "I just didn't want to cause trouble." "Ironic, isn't it?" I replied, not unkindly. Her betrayal had hurt less than the others. She'd always been a peacekeeper rather than a truth-teller. Then it was Lydia's turn. My sister's documents were the most extensive, relinquishing any claim to family properties, forfeiting her position as my healthcare proxy and insurance beneficiary, and acknowledging a complete severance of our relationship. "Megan, please," she whispered, mascara streaked down her pale cheeks. "We're sisters." I corrected. "Sisters don't sleep with each other's husbands." "I love him," she insisted, as if that explained everything, excused everything. "And I loved you," I replied simply. "Sign the papers, Lydia." She did, her signature a messy scrawl that barely resembled her usual artistic flourish. Finally, Michael presented the last clipboard to Brandon. My husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, glared at me with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "You've lost your mind," he spat. "I'm not signing anything." I leaned close, keeping my voice low and steady. "The thing about being a therapist, Brandon, is that people tell me things. Like your client Thomas Reeves, the one who confessed to tax fraud during your consultations. Or Catherine Wilson, whose offshore accounts you helped establish. I keep excellent notes." His face went ashen. "You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? You've spent 14 months betraying me with my own sister while our entire family watched and said nothing. You don't know me at all anymore." The pen shook in his hand, but he signed all 3 documents: the beach house transfer, the divorce agreement, and the non-disclosure contract. Michael notarized each signature efficiently, then gathered the papers into his briefcase. "I'll file these first thing Monday morning," he informed me. "Everything appears to be in order." I nodded, suddenly feeling hollow despite my victory. "Thank you, Michael. You can go now." After he left through the service entrance, I faced my family again. The sedative was beginning to wear off, their expressions showing more clarity and comprehension of what had just occurred. "What happens now?" Amanda asked quietly. "Are you going to leave us here all night?" I shook my head and began moving around the circle, untying each person's restraints. "No. You're all free to go. The effects of the sedative will wear off completely within the hour. I wouldn't recommend driving until morning, though." "So that's it?" Brandon demanded as I untied him last. "You drug us, blackmail us, take everything and just walk away?" I stepped back, regarding him calmly. "Not everything. Just what's rightfully mine, plus compensation for your betrayal. The divorce papers give you your clothes, your car, and your personal items. The rest, including your partnership share in the law firm, goes to me." "You'll never get away with this," he growled. "I already have." I gestured toward the house. "You all might want to gather your belongings. I expect the property vacated by noon tomorrow." One by one they shuffled toward the house, unsteady but moving under their own power. Only Lydia remained, still seated though now unbound. "You've thought of everything," she said softly. "The perfect revenge." "Not revenge," I corrected. "Justice. There's a difference. Will you ever forgive me?" I considered her question seriously. "No," I finally answered. "But I will forget you, which is a mercy you don't deserve." She nodded, tears flowing freely, and followed the others inside. I remained by the pool, watching moonlight dance across the water's surface. For the first time in 14 months I felt like I could breathe fully. 3 weeks later I signed the final paperwork selling the beach house. The new owners were a young couple expecting their first child, starry-eyed and hopeful in a way that made my chest ache with both envy and nostalgia. "Congratulations," I told them, handing over the keys. "Make happy memories here." The real estate agent shot me a curious look. She'd heard rumors about the unusual circumstances of my sudden divorce and property acquisition. But the sale was legitimate, the money now safely transferred to my account. I walked away from the closing without looking back. The following day I signed a lease on a new office space in a different part of town. The suite was twice the size of my previous practice, with an airy waiting room and 3 consultation offices. The sign installed above the door read, "Phoenix Therapy Services, Healing After Betrayal." Brandon had contested the divorce agreement, of course, but withdrew his objection when I had my attorney deliver copies of those client files I'd mentioned. The law firm conducted a quiet internal investigation, resulting in his voluntary resignation. Last I heard, he and Lydia had moved to Arizona, where he was trying to rebuild his practice and reputation. The others had scattered back to their lives, though family gatherings would surely be awkward for years to come. Jessica had called once, leaving a voicemail that wavered between apology and justification. I deleted it without responding. 6 months after that night at the beach house, I sat in Dr. Eleanor Winter's office for what we'd agreed would be our final session. I'd been seeing her weekly since the divorce. Therapists need therapists too, especially after orchestrating such elaborate confrontations. "How are you feeling about everything now?" she asked, her kind eyes studying me carefully. I considered the question the same one she'd asked during our first session. Back then my answer had been a tangled mess of rage, vindication, and lingering pain. "I'll be balanced," I said finally. "What I did was extreme, but so was their betrayal. Sometimes justice requires dramatic measures." Do you regret any of it? I shook my head. I regret that it was necessary. I regret trusting people who didn't deserve my trust. But the actions themselves, well, they were calculated choices, not emotional reactions. Dr. Winters nodded thoughtfully. And your new practice? Thriving, I answered truthfully. Turns out there's no shortage of people dealing with betrayal. I understand them in ways other therapists can't. Because you've been there. Because I've been there, survived it, and reclaimed my power, I corrected. That's what I offer them, not just sympathy but a pathway forward. As I left her office for the last time, stepping into the bright afternoon sunlight, I realized something significant had shifted within me. The beach house weekend hadn't just been about punishing those who betrayed me. It had been about reclaiming myself from the ashes of their deception. My phone chimed with a calendar alert. My first afternoon client, a woman whose husband and best friend had been having an affair for years while their social circle looked the other way. I smiled slightly, thinking of the guidance I could offer from my unique perspective. Some might call what I did to my family revenge. Others might label it justice. The line between the two is often philosophical rather than practical. What matters is that I walked through fire and emerged stronger, wiser, and finally free. They all knew my husband was sleeping with my sister, and they all paid the price for their silence. As for me, I'd paid mine through humiliation and betrayal. Now it was time to build something new from the ruins of what came before. A life without secrets, without lies, and without those who had proven themselves unworthy of my trust. Sometimes the most important relationship to salvage is the one with yourself. If this story of sweet revenge had you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button right now. My favorite part was when Megan served those personalized cocktails, knowing exactly what was coming next. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more thrilling stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.